Part 1. The Desperate Call. The crystal spires of Nexara gleamed like diamonds against the purple sky, their surfaces catching the light of 3 distant suns. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrian civilization had thrived on this world, their technology, harmonizing with nature in ways that seemed almost magical. Cities floated gracefully above lush forests, connected by bridges of pure energy that pulsed with the rhythm of life itself. High Counselor Thyra stood on the observation deck of the central spire, her translucent blue skin shimmering with worry. Below her, the once magnificent city of Ethros was dying. Where vibrant energy streams once flowed between buildings, now only flickering remnants remained. The very air seemed drained of its vitality. The reports from the outer colonies are all the same, announced Counselor Vex, his voice heavy with despair. The Devourers consume everything. Our energy shields, our power cores, even the life force from our people. Nothing stops them. Thyra closed her 4 eyes, feeling the weight of her species' survival on her shoulders. The Devourers had appeared 3 cycles ago, emerging from the void between stars like a plague of living darkness. They were not machines, nor were they truly alive in any sense the Zephyrians understood. They were something far worse. Entities that fed on energy itself, growing stronger with every world they consumed. How many colonies have we lost? Thyra asked, though she dreaded the answer. 17. Vex replied quietly. And they're moving toward the core worlds. Our military estimates we have perhaps 1 cycle before they reach Nexara itself. The council chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of failing energy conduits. The Zephyrians had always been a peaceful people, their conflicts resolved through diplomacy and wisdom rather than warfare. Their technology reflected this philosophy, beautiful, efficient, but utterly inadequate against an enemy that seemed to exist solely to destroy. We must consider the unthinkable, spoke Elder Zara, her ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. We must send the plea. The plea was a concept as old as Zephyrian civilization itself. A desperate call for help broadcast across the galaxy when all hope seemed lost. It had been used only twice in their history, both times during natural disasters that threatened their species' existence. Never had it been used to call for military aid. To whom would we send it? Asked Counselor Miran. The Galactic Federation disbanded decades ago. The trade routes have gone silent. Most species have withdrawn to their home systems. We send it to everyone, Thyra decided, her voice growing stronger with resolve. Every species, every world, that might still listen. We include all known languages, all communication protocols. Someone out there must be willing to help. The council worked through the night, crafting a message that transcended language and culture. They described their peaceful nature, their contributions to galactic knowledge, and their current desperate situation. The Devourers were not just a threat to the Zephyrians. They were a threat to all energy-based life in the galaxy. As dawn broke over Nexara's dying cities, the message was nearly complete. Every major galactic language had been included, from the musical tones of the Aquarii to the electromagnetic pulses of the silicon mines. But one language remained a subject of heated debate. We cannot include Terran Standard, insisted Counselor Vex. The humans disappeared from galactic society over 50 years ago. They're probably extinct or worse. They might still be the monsters from the old stories. The old stories also say they were the most formidable warriors the galaxy has ever known, countered Elder Zara. If anyone could face these Devourers, it would be them. Thyra listened to the arguments, remembering the tales passed down through generations. Humans had once been active members of galactic society, their ingenuity and determination legendary, but they were also feared for their capacity for violence, their unpredictable nature, and their tendency to find solutions that other species couldn't even imagine. The decision that would change everything came down to a simple vote. By the narrowest margin, the Council agreed to include Terran Standard in their desperate plea. The message was encoded with human linguistic patterns, mathematical concepts, and even crude pictographs that any intelligent species could interpret. The massive transmission array powered up, drawing the last reserves of energy from Nexara's failing grid. The plea began its journey across the void. It raced through space at faster than light speeds, seeking any ear willing to listen, any heart moved to compassion. Far from Nexara, in the outer rim of what was once called the Sol system, a monitoring station drifted in the darkness between planets. The station was ancient by galactic standards, its hull scarred by decades of micrometeorite impacts and solar radiation. Most species had forgotten it existed, assuming it was just another piece of space debris from humanity's more active period. Inside the station, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in meditation, her weathered hands folded peacefully in her lap. At 68, she was one of the few humans who remembered the galaxy before humanity's great withdrawal. She had been young then, eager to explore the stars and make friends among the alien species that populated the void. Those dreams had died during the Proxima incident, when humanity's attempt to help resolve a conflict between two alien species had been catastrophically misunderstood. Branded as aggressors and warmongers, humans had been forced to choose between endless conflict and voluntary exile. They chose exile, retreating to their home system and severing almost all contact with the outside galaxy. The alert chime that interrupted Sarah's meditation was soft, almost apologetic. She opened her eyes and moved to the communication console, expecting nothing more than cosmic background radiation, or perhaps a stray signal from one of Jupiter's moons. What she found instead made her blood run cold. The signal was complex, layered, with dozens of languages and communication protocols, but embedded within it, clear as starlight, was a section in perfect Terran standard. Sarah's hands trembled as she decoded the message, her translator working overtime to parse the alien languages that surrounded the human text. "By all the stars," she whispered, reading the desperate plea from the Zephyrians. "They're being exterminated." The message painted a picture of a peaceful species facing extinction at the hands of entities that consumed energy itself. Sarah's military mind immediately grasped the implications. If these devourers continued unchecked, they would eventually consume every energy-based civilization in the galaxy. Sarah activated the emergency protocols, sending the message through quantum channels to Earth's governing council. The response came within hours, and it was not what she expected. "Negative on intervention," came the cold reply from Council Chairman Morrison. "Humanity's isolation protocols remain in effect. We do not interfere in galactic affairs." "Sir," Sarah transmitted back, "this isn't about galactic politics. This is about survival. If these devourers aren't stopped, they'll eventually reach our system too. The matter is closed, Admiral. Continue monitoring duties only." Sarah stared at the communication console for a long moment, then began typing a message that would either save her career or end it. She knew the location of 3 decommissioned human battleships, mothballed in secret shipyards beyond Pluto's orbit. She also knew the names of several hundred veterans who, like her, remembered what it felt like to be part of something larger than themselves. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen to all monitoring stations," she transmitted on the old military. "Emergency frequency. I'm declaring code Omega. Humanity has been called to serve once more." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, messages poured in from across the Sol system. Retired soldiers, engineers, scientists, and pilots, all volunteering, for a mission that their own government had forbidden. As Sarah began coordinating humanity's first unauthorized military operation in 50 years, the plea continued its journey across the galaxy. Most species who received it deleted the message or filed it away as someone else's problem. A few sent sympathetic responses but claimed they were too weak to help. But in the hidden corners of human space, old engines were beginning to warm up, and forgotten warriors were preparing for one last battle. The galaxy's most feared species was about to remember why they had once been respected as much as they were frightened. The Zephyrians had called for help, and despite official policy, despite the risks, despite 50 years of isolation, humanity was going to answer. 3 days after the plea was sent, Thyra received a response that made her heart race with hope and terror in equal measure. The message was brief, transmitted in perfect Zephyrian, but its origin signature was unmistakably human. "We hear your call. We are coming. Hold the line." The most feared species in the galaxy was returning to the stars, and the Devourers were about to learn why humanity had earned its terrible reputation. The answer comes. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like ghosts returning from the dead. 3 massive battleships materialized at the edge of the Nexara system, their hulls, dark and angular, bristling with weapons that had been silent for half a century. The Indomitable, the Prometheus, and the Last Stand, ships whose names had once struck fear into the hearts of pirates and tyrants across the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the tactical display. What she saw there made her jaw clench with barely controlled anger. The outer planets of the Nexara system were dead, their surfaces stripped of all energy signatures. Where once thriving colonies had existed, now only barren. "Rocks remained, ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, his voice tight with emotion. "I'm reading massive energy disturbances around the 4th planet. The Devourers are there in force." Sarah nodded grimly. The journey from Sol had taken 2 weeks, and every day they had monitored increasingly desperate transmissions from the Zephyrians. Entire worlds had fallen silent during their voyage, consumed by the relentless hunger of the entities that fed on energy itself. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian government," Sarah ordered. "It's time to announce our arrival." The response came. Within minutes, a trembling voice speaking in accented but clear Terran standard. "This is High Counselor Thera of Nexara. Are you truly human? We had given up hope." "We're here," Sarah replied simply. "And we're not leaving until this threat is eliminated. We need to meet in person to coordinate our response." "I warn you," Thyra's voice carried centuries of exhaustion. "These entities are unlike anything we've ever encountered. They don't just destroy, they consume the very essence of energy itself. Our most powerful weapons only made them stronger." Sarah allowed herself a thin smile. "Counselor, there's something you should know about humans. We don't just fight with energy weapons. We fight with everything." The meeting took place aboard a Zephyrian diplomatic vessel that met the human fleet halfway between Nexara and its largest moon. Sarah walked through the crystalline corridors of the alien ship, her magnetic boots clicking against surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The Zephyrians who greeted her were beautiful in an otherworldly way, their translucent, blue skin shimmering with patterns that reflected their emotions, but Sarah could see the exhaustion in their movements, the defeat in their postures. These were a people who had run out of options. High Counselor Thyra was ancient by Zephyrian standards, her skin bearing the silver patterns that marked centuries of life. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of watching her civilization die. "In 3 days they will reach Nexara," she said without preamble. "Our shields can hold for perhaps 6 hours after that. We have evacuation ships, but nowhere to go that they won't eventually follow." Sarah studied the holographic displays showing the Devourers' advance. The entities appeared as shifting masses of darkness, absorbing light and energy from everything they touched. They moved with purpose, consuming entire energy grids before moving on to the next target. "Tell me about their behavior patterns," Sarah said. "How do they communicate? How do they choose targets?" "They don't communicate as we understand it," replied Counselor Vex. "They simply consume. They're drawn to the largest energy sources first, but they eventually drain everything." Sarah's mind was already working, processing tactical scenarios and possibilities. "You said your weapons made them stronger. What about non-energy attacks? Kinetic weapons? Projectiles?" "We tried that early on," Thyra said sadly. "Physical weapons pass right through them. They exist in a state that's partially energy, partially matter. Nothing we understand can touch them." "But you understand frequencies, right?" Sarah asked. Suddenly. "Energy patterns, resonance, harmonics." The Zephyrians exchanged glances. "Of course. Our entire civilization is based on energy harmonics. Why do you ask?" Sarah pulled up a datapad and began sketching rapidly. "Because I think I know what they are. And if I'm right, there might be a way to stop them. Over the next few hours, Sarah worked with the Zephyrian scientists to understand the exact nature of the Devourers. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The entities existed in a quantum state, simultaneously energy and matter, feeding on the quantum fluctuations that powered most advanced civilizations. They're like parasites, explained Dr. Elena Vasquez, Sarah's chief science officer. But they feed on the fundamental forces that hold energy-based technology together. That's why conventional weapons don't work. They're actually feeding the creatures. But every quantum system has a resonance frequency, Sarah mused, something that defines its existence in this reality. If we could find that frequency, we could disrupt their quantum coherence, finished Dr. Kieran, the lead Zephyrian physicist. Force them back into whatever dimension they came from, but the energy requirements would be enormous. Sarah smiled grimly. Leave that to us. Humans have always been good at making big noises. The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. They would use the combined power of the human, battleships, and the remaining Zephyrian energy grid to create a massive sonic resonance pulse. But first, they had to find the exact frequency that would disrupt the Devourer's quantum structure. The testing began immediately, with volunteers from both species working around the clock. The Zephyrians provided their deep understanding of energy harmonics, while the humans contributed their talent for brute force engineering solutions. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ensign Maria Santos, barely 23 years old and on her first deep space mission, was analyzing the quantum signatures of Devourer attacks when she noticed something the older scientists had missed. "Admiral," she said excitedly, "I think they're not from another dimension at all. Look at this pattern. It's almost like they're echoes." Sarah studied the data, her eyes widening with understanding. "They're reflections. These things are actually quantum echoes of energy that was consumed by black holes. They exist in the space between reality and void. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If the Devourers were quantum echoes, then they could be canceled out by generating their exact opposite frequency, a process called destructive interference. Working together, human engineers and Zephyrian scientists began modifying the battleship's communication arrays. Instead of sending messages across space, they would broadcast a carefully calculated anti-frequency that should theoretically cancel out the Devourer's quantum signature. As the modifications neared completion, long-range sensors detected the approaching swarm. Millions of Devourers were flowing toward Nexara like a tide of living darkness, consuming the last of the outer system's energy sources as they came. "They'll be here in 18 hours, reported Commander Jackson. "Our preparations better work, because we won't get a second chance." The final hours were a frenzy of activity. Every available human and Zephyrian worked to fine-tune the resonance generators, while the battleships took position around Nexara. The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. They would wait until the Devourers were fully committed to attacking the planet, then hit them with every resonance generator simultaneously. High Counselor Thyra stood beside Admiral Chen on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as the darkness approached. "I want you to know," she said quietly, "that regardless of the outcome, you have already given us something precious. Hope." Sarah nodded, her hand hovering over the activation controls. "Hope is what humans do best, Counselor. That and refusing to give up when everyone says we should." The Devourers struck Nexara's shields like a wave of pure destruction, their hunger so intense that the very space around them seemed to bend. For a moment it looked like they would break through immediately. Then Sarah activated the resonance generators. The sound that emerged wasn't audible in the traditional sense. It was felt in the quantum foam itself, a deep harmonic that resonated through the fabric of reality. Across the system, human and Zephyrian technology worked in perfect harmony, generating frequencies that had never existed before. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and dramatic. The entities began to flicker, their quantum coherence disrupted by the destructive interference. One by one, they faded from existence, canceling out as their quantum echoes met their perfect opposites. Within minutes, the threat that had consumed 17 worlds was gone, dissolved back into the quantum foam from which it had emerged. The celebration that followed was subdued but heartfelt. The Zephyrians had saved their world, and humanity had proved that they could be protectors as well as warriors. More importantly, both species had learned that cooperation could achieve what neither could accomplish alone. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself appointed as humanity's first official ambassador to the Zephyrian Republic. The isolation that had defined human policy for 50 years was officially ended, replaced by a new philosophy of cautious engagement. The galaxy is large enough for all of us, Sarah told the Earth Council during her final report, but only if we're willing to help each other survive. The Devourers were gone, but their legacy lived on in the alliance between two very different species. Humanity had answered the call for help, and in doing so, had found their way back to the stars. As the human fleet prepared to return to Sol, High Counselor Thyra transmitted a final message. "Thank you for remembering what it means to be heroes." Sarah smiled as she read the words. "Thank you for reminding us," she whispered to the stars.